The headline spoke of change, Japan's Shikishima to retire, a vessel that had long been a symbol of stability and order in the contested waters of the West Philippine Sea. For years its presence was a quiet reassurance, a sign that someone was watching over these tense, disputed waters. Its retirement marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new, uncertain chapter for Asian maritime security. The region's balance, already fragile, now seemed to teeter on the edge. But for the Filipino fishermen, who braved these waters every day, the news was more than just a headline. For them, the sea was not a stage for international politics, it was their lifeline, their daily struggle for survival, and the only world they had ever known. For years, the distant silhouette of the Shikishima on the horizon meant a measure of safety. It was a silent guardian, a watchful eye that kept the peace in waters where tensions simmered just below the surface. Then, one morning, the familiar shape was gone. The horizon was empty, and the fishermen felt the absence immediately. A sense of unease settling in as they searched the waves for the ship that was no longer there. The change crept in quietly at first. Radio chatter, once routine, grew tense and urgent. The air was thick with uncertainty, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. Soon, new ships appeared on the horizon, larger, more imposing than the Shikishima. Their arrival was not subtle, it was a show of force, a reminder that the rules of the sea were changing. These were China Coast Guard vessels, colossal, intimidating, painted in stark white and red. Their presence was unmistakable, their intentions clear, to assert dominance over these contested waters. The calm that once defined the West Philippine Sea evaporated almost overnight. In its place was a growing sense of fear and vulnerability among the fishermen, who now faced not just the dangers of the sea, but the threat of confrontation. Near Ayungin Shoal, as the first light of dawn broke over the water, Filipino fishermen worked quickly, pulling in their nets and hoping for a good catch. But the mood had changed. Every movement was shadowed by anxiety. Suddenly, a massive ship loomed over them, blocking out the rising sun and casting a long, dark shadow across the water. The fishermen froze, their hearts pounding as the vessel drew closer. It wasn't the familiar Shikishima. This was a different ship, unfamiliar, imposing, and unmistakably foreign. The sense of protection the fishermen once felt was gone, replaced by a chilling uncertainty. The new vessel bristled with antennas and water cannons, its deck crowded with equipment designed for intimidation. Suddenly, a deafening horn blared, echoing across the waves, and sending a clear message. A voice boomed from a loudspeaker, ordering the fishermen to leave immediately. The words were harsh, the tone unmistakably hostile, a stark contrast to the silent watchfulness of the Shikishima. In a panic, the fishermen abandoned their nets and their hard-earned catch, fleeing across the waves to escape the looming threat. Their livelihoods, already precarious, now hung by a thread. This became the new reality in the West Philippine Sea after Shikishima's retirement. The sense of order and predictability was gone, replaced by fear and uncertainty. The unwritten rules that once allowed small, vulnerable fishermen to coexist with powerful patrol ships had been rewritten, no longer favoring the weak, but empowering the strong. The quiet understanding that had allowed for a fragile peace was shattered. Now, every day on the water was a gamble. Every catch, a risk. The departure of one ship created a vacuum, and in the world of geopolitics, vacuums are always filled, often by force, rarely by diplomacy. The balance of power didn't just shift, it was overturned. The rules of engagement had changed, and the consequences were felt most by those with the least power to resist. For the Philippines, a daunting new chapter began, a struggle not just for fish, but for sovereignty, dignity, and the right to exist in their own waters. The West Philippine Sea, vast and unforgiving, had become a battleground for the nation's future. The sea, once a source of bounty and hope, had become a frontier of fear and uncertainty. The livelihoods of countless families now hung in the balance. The stakes had changed. It was no longer just about fish or daily survival. It was about the very future of a nation and the courage of its people to stand their ground in the face of overwhelming odds. For over 30 years, the PLH-31 Shikishima was more than just a ship. It was a legend, a silent guardian patrolling the vast and unpredictable waters of East Asia. Its silhouette on the horizon was a familiar sight to sailors and fishermen alike, a constant reminder of Japan's enduring presence at sea. Launched in 1992, Shikishima was the world's largest patrol vessel at the time, a floating fortress that embodied Japan's commitment to maritime security and stability. Its sheer size and advanced technology set it apart, making it a symbol of national pride and technological achievement. Its primary mission was both unique and critical, escorting nuclear fuel shipments across treacherous waters. This task demanded not only reliability and endurance, but also unwavering vigilance, as the stakes were incredibly high for both safety and international relations. The Shikishima's presence in these contested waters served as a quiet yet powerful deterrent. It reinforced freedom of navigation and helped maintain a fragile peace, often without a single shot being fired. For Filipino mariners and neighboring nations, Shikishima was more than a patrol ship. It was a benchmark, a floating embassy of order and stability in a region where tensions could flare at any moment. Its retirement in early 2025 marked not just the end of a ship's service, but the close of an era. The ceremony was somber as crew members stepped off the deck for the last time, knowing they were leaving behind a legacy that would be hard to match. The balance Shikishima helped maintain was delicate, built as much on its visible presence as on its reputation for strength and resolve. Its watchful eyes kept potential conflicts at bay, and its absence would be felt by all who relied on that stability. When that presence vanished, the unspoken agreements and mutual understandings that had governed the sea began to unravel. Tensions simmered just below the surface, and minor disputes threatened to escalate without the Shikishima's steadying influence. The Shikishima was more than steel and engines. It was a symbol of post-war Japan's commitment to peace, law, and international cooperation. Its crew took pride in upholding these values every day. Its absence signaled a changing of the guard. Newer ships would take its place. But the transition brought uncertainty, and the region braced for unforeseen consequences as the old order faded. The region was unprepared for how quickly the rules would change. Without Shikishima's guiding presence, the seas grew more unpredictable, and the future of maritime security in East Asia was suddenly more uncertain than ever before. The vacuum left by Shikishima's departure was quickly filled, but not by a return to calm or stability. Instead, the absence of the Japanese patrol ship created an opening, one that China was quick to exploit, moving with calculated speed and purpose. China unleashed its own giants, monster cutters, some over 12,000 tons, dwarfing even the Philippine Coast Guard's largest ships. These vessels, gleaming white and bristling with equipment, were not just symbols of maritime might. They were floating fortresses designed to project power and intimidate all who crossed their path. These vessels weren't just for show, they were tools of gray zone tactics, aggressive, coercive, but just short of war. Their captains expertly walked the line between provocation and open conflict, using their size and presence to dominate the waters without firing a shot. Chinese ships established a near-permanent presence around key Philippine features, enforcing China's sweeping claims. Day and night, they patrolled the contested reefs and shoals, their flags a constant reminder of Beijing's ambitions and its willingness to challenge the status quo. The shift was swift. Where Shikishima stood for law, these ships stood for ambition. The rules of engagement changed overnight, as the region's sense of order gave way to a new, more forceful reality. They shadowed, blocked, and intimidated Philippine vessels, erasing the professional distance once maintained at sea. Encounters that were once routine became fraught with tension, as Filipino crews found themselves constantly under the watchful eyes of their much larger counterparts. Within months, the West Philippine Sea felt like occupied territory. The sheer number and size of Chinese ships made it clear who now controlled the waves, leaving little room for challenge or dissent. The balance of power was shattered, replaced by the rule of the largest ship. In these waters, might now made right, and the message was unmistakable. China was here to stay. For the Philippines, confrontation became daily reality. Every patrol was a test of nerves and resolve as Filipino sailors faced the daunting presence of China's maritime giants, knowing that the old order had been swept away almost overnight. For ordinary Filipinos, this was no abstract policy. It was a daily struggle. Fishermen like Mancardo, who once waved at foreign boats, now ran at the sight of China Coast Guard ships. Chased for miles, their small bankas were no match for steel behemoths. Water cannons became weapons, damaging boats and terrifying crews. This was state-sanctioned bullying, not law enforcement. The Philippine Coast Guard faced constant harassment while resupplying outposts like the BRP Sierra Madre. Videos showed Chinese ships cutting across bows, risking collision. The cost was paid in lost livelihoods, damaged property, and relentless anxiety. The struggle for sovereignty was felt in every decision to risk the sea. The human toll was mounting day by day. The aggression threatened more than fishermen. It struck at the nation's core. The West Philippine Sea is vital for food security and energy, supplying fish and holding untapped oil and gas. China's blockade strangled economic growth and energy independence. Companies hesitated to invest, fearing Chinese interference. The Philippine Coast Guard's inability to operate freely was a direct challenge to sovereignty. The retirement of Shikishima exposed vulnerabilities, forcing a reckoning. The threat was no longer distant. It was a clear and present danger. The Philippines refused to surrender. The government accelerated modernization, acquiring new patrol vessels and boosting Coast Guard and Navy budgets. The goal: credible presence, not naval war. Alliances were strengthened, joint patrols with the US, new partnerships with Japan and Australia. Japan, once the provider of Shikishima, now supplied next-generation vessels. Joint exercises with allies sent a message: the Philippines was not alone. The spirit of Shikishima lived on in a coalition of democracies. Filipino sailors showed courage, documenting harassment and standing firm. Their bravery became a symbol of national pride. The fight was waged with strategy, resolve, and the support of friends. The Philippines found a new weapon: radical transparency. The Coast Guard embedded journalists, equipped crews with cameras, and released footage of Chinese aggression. Every incident was documented and shared globally, exposing the reality at sea. The world saw the bullying tactics firsthand, and international support grew. Transparency gave allies political ammunition and reframed the struggle as a fight for international law. At home, it galvanized unity and resolve. The power of truth became a shield. The camera became the slingshot in this modern David and Goliath story. The pressure in the West Philippine Sea forged national unity. Atin ito, this is ours, became a rallying cry, uniting Filipinos across divides. Civilian-led supply missions and Bayanihan spirit brought aid and solidarity to those at sea. Artists, lawyers, and citizens all contributed to the cause. The nation's resolve empowered the government to stand firm in diplomacy and defense. The world took notice. A united nation is a resilient partner. The crisis awakened the collective will of the Filipino people. Their greatest strength was not their ships, but their unity and heart. Today, the West Philippine Sea remains contested, but the Philippines is no longer just reacting. The retirement of Shikishima marked a turning point, one of resilience and innovation. Its legacy lives on in new Coast Guard vessels, many built with Japan's help. Strengthened alliances, and a vocal defense of maritime law define the new era. Hope endures in the courage of fishermen, Coast Guard crews, and citizens. The world now sees a nation tested but unbroken. The story is no longer one of loss, but of courage and unity. Like a well-built ship, the Filipino spirit weathers any storm.